Arrest her. She doesn't belong here. Jane Mitchell's voice cut through the quiet afternoon in Maple Grove, one of Riverside County's most exclusive neighborhoods. Moments later, police sirens pierced the air. But this wasn't your average 911 call. 7-year-old Betty Williams sat on her bright pink bike, tears streaming down her cheeks, clutching her worn unicorn. Star. 3 police officers had surrounded her, and across from them, Jane Mitchell, arms crossed, looked pleased. "I told you she doesn't belong here," she said coldly. Every word marked Betty as an outsider. Through her sobs, she whispered, "I want my mommy." It wasn't just a plea, it was a child's desperate question to a world that suddenly felt terrifying. And Jane, along with the officers, had no idea the storm they were about to unleash. The truth, when it came, would expose assumptions and prejudices nobody wanted to see. But let's rewind 45 minutes. Betty Williams was just being a 7-year-old, curious, bright-eyed, and innocent. She had moved to Maple Grove with her mother, Chief Sarah Williams, the police chief of Riverside County's single mom who had fought her way to the top, one of only 3 black women ever to hold that position. She'd worked long hours, double shifts sometimes, to give Betty a fresh start in a good school district, a place where her daughter could dream big. That morning, Sarah walked Betty to her first day at Maple Grove Elementary, kissed her goodbye, and left for a long day of meetings and city council work, unaware that her own child would face the kind of prejudice she fought against daily. Meanwhile, across the street, Jane Mitchell, 45, lived alone after a devastating divorce. Having lost her job, savings, and sense of control, she had called herself the neighborhood watch coordinator. But really, she was a woman trying to control what little she could. When the Williams family moved in, something dark stirred in Jane. For 2 weeks, she observed Sarah and Betty meticulously, watching their every move, waiting for the tiniest excuse to act on her biases. Betty, on her first day at school, had a wonderful day. She made a friend, Emma, shared laughs, and felt finale that she belonged. On the way home, she decided to ride her pink bike around the block, looking for pretty rocks, just like her dad had taught her. He told her, "Every rock has a story if you look close enough." And that's exactly what Betty was doing, magnifying glass in hand, searching the mulch around the mailboxes. Jane, peering through her blinds, didn't see innocence. She saw a threat. That 7-year-old girl, examining a rock, suspicious, dangerous. And Jane decided it was time to act. She marched across the street, scolding Betty. "What are you doing digging around our mailboxes? Where are your parents? What are you really doing here?" Betty, eyes wide, held up her treasure rock. "I found it. My daddy taught me." But Jane wasn't interested. She snatched the rock. "You don't belong here," she spat, when Betty misremembered her house number. A tiny, understandable mistake. Jane pounced, claiming deception, and when Betty's magnifying glass accidentally broke in her panic, Jane interpreted it as vandalism. She pulled out her phone, filming and narrating, each word designed to paint Betty as a threat, each syllable dripping with prejudice. Neighbors like Mrs. Chun and Mr. Rodriguez watched, worried, but intimidated by Jane's aggressive display. Betty tried to pedal away, only to be blocked, chased, and confronted. The sirens approaching only deepened her fear. At 7 years old, police meant only one thing: she must have done something wrong. Jane dialed 911, presenting herself as concerned and terrified, but emphasizing Betty's race as evidence of criminal behavior. Suspicious black child, tampering with mailboxes, destroying property, erratic behavior, might be abandoned. She lied with precision, framing a terrified little girl as a criminal. Dispatcher Maria Santos, a season 911 operator, noticed the address, 421 Maple Street Chief Sarah Williams' house. Calls went unanswered. Sarah was in a critical council meeting discussing police reform. Meanwhile, Betty, trembling and clutching Star, hid behind a tree, whispering desperate pleas into her smartwatch. "Mommy, help me. I didn't do anything wrong. I just found a pretty rock." The police arrived. Officer Jackson, experienced and thorough. Officer Miller, tough but rule-bound. And Officer Thompson, a rookie still learning the ropes. They saw a sobbing child with a stuffed unicorn. But Jane's narrative framed her as dangerous. And they moved in, surrounding Betty. She looked up, whispering, "I want my mommy." Sarah, now alerted by emergency notifications, raced home. She arrived to find her daughter surrounded by uniformed officers, crying hysterically, while Jane stood nearby, triumphant, in civilian clothes. Sarah ran to Betty. "Mommy's here," she called, arms outstretched. Betty leaped into her mother's embrace. "I wasn't bad. I just found a rock." The officers froze. The child they had been investigating was the daughter of their chief, the woman who signed their paychecks. Officer Thompson's stomach sank. Officer Miller's mind reeled. Officer Jackson moved to assess the damage, realizing the gravity of what had occurred. Jane Mitchell's smug satisfaction dissolved into horror. She had weaponized the police against the police chief's daughter. Sarah gathered Betty and addressed the officers with controlled fury. "I want a full report on how my 7-year-old became a suspect in her own neighborhood," she demanded. Witnesses like Mrs. Chun and Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward, returning Betty's broken magnifying glass and testifying to her innocence. The truth was undeniable. Betty had been playing, exploring, discovering the world with wonder. Consequences followed swiftly. Jane faced charges for filing a false report and was removed for neighborhood leadership. The homeowners association ostracized her. Sarah used the incident to implement department-wide reforms, mandatory retraining on community policing, bias awareness, and protocols for evaluating racially motivated calls. Betty's resilience shone. With her mother's love and the community support, she continued collecting rocks, sharing her discoveries with friends, and reclaiming her innocence. Maple Grove transformed into a neighborhood aware of prejudice, protective of children, and committed to inclusion. 3 months later, Betty sat at her yard, showing crystals and patterns to friends. Sarah watched from the porch, pride swelling in her chest. That day had started with sirens, lies, and fear, but ended in hope, love, and justice. Betty's treasure wasn't just a shiny rock. It was the lesson that good people standing together can protect innocence, demand justice, and create a world where every child is valued. If this story moved you, subscribe, like, and share. Every child deserves the chance to explore their world with wonder, safety, and joy.